how are they able to have Caleb Martin on this roster right now? Why does he choose Philadelphia?
In part because of this new CBA and everyone being, scared of the second apron and all these things. So I think Caleb Martin and his agent overestimated his market, perhaps. You can see, Mike, like right now, the guys getting hurt the most by this are what you would call like the NBA middle class. Guys like Caleb Martin who are above average role players that just aren't getting the deals they would have gotten once upon a time. If he had, from what I understand, what's been reported is if he had opted into his deal with the Heat, he was going to get offered a bigger deal by Miami. When he opts out of his deal with Miami, that's no longer possible because then he's a free agent and Miami doesn't have his rights, and so it just complicates things. So then he hits the open market and he has to take a probably what you would call a below market value deal for a guy like him with the Sixers. So, you got to give Daryl Morey a lot of credit, man. I mean, he saw the writing on the wall with this CBA. He knew how he had an idea of how these things were going to go. And so far it's allowed him to sign, the Clippers getting scared of the second apron. He gets Paul George. Caleb Martin's agents perhaps not reading the writing on the wall well enough. And, he kind of falls into the lap. So it's really just a matter of economics, and really it's economics and a whole lot of luck.
Yeah, so let's get into this a little bit. Caleb Martin, a role player. I mean, not a superstar, not an all-star player. I wouldn't say he's a power forward. What does he bring to the table? Where does he fit in on this roster?
It's funny because I see a lot of people Mike, how many power forwards are there in the NBA? Like true power forwards,
right?
Like Giannis. Like that's probably about. Like I see people saying like, "Oh, Julius Randle." I don't think these people have watched Julius Randle plays basketball. This guy takes, and that's not to discredit Julius Randle, but he takes a lot of long twos and threes. Like he's not gonna pound someone, back to the basket. That's not his style of play.
Charles Oakley's not emerging.
Correct. Anthony Mason is not coming through that door. Charles Barkley even is not coming through that door. But no, but like. Yeah, I know there was like the thing that's I think it was Bontemps or someone put out like, oh, he's their starting power forward. Look, you have three wings in Oubre, in Caleb Martin, and in Paul George that are very switchable across the board, which makes the Sixers an infinitely more dangerous basketball team defensively when you look at it from that perspective. All three of those guys have extremely long wingspans too. I think Caleb Martin's is like he's 6'5", but he's got like a 6'10" wingspan. Kelly Oubre's wingspan is over 7 foot. Paul George is in that neighborhood too. Like these are three long, athletic, defensive, like guys who are very good on the defensive end of the floor. So I think with Caleb Martin, you get a guy who is a versatile defender first and foremost, who's likely either it's him or Kelly Oubre on most nights is going to take the most difficult perimeter defensive assignment, you would think. And then offensively, look, what I like about Caleb Martin compared to maybe, like let's look at it from the Sixers perspective of a guy like Matisse Thybulle. He was a defensive specialist. He offered you nothing on the offensive end. With Martin, you get that defense. You also get a guy that can dribble, pass, and shoot. And so those are very important things. And then I would say to top it off too, Mike, like this is a guy that the last 2 years has raised his level of play in the postseason. That if you're a Sixers fan, that can't be lost on you when you see how some guys that's not the case. It's the complete opposite. So to see a guy who's actually a playoff riser is a very good thing, I think, for the Sixers.
Yeah, well, I was gonna follow up with he's 6'5", kind of a wing defender, long arm. What kind of players does he match up well with that you'll see in the playoffs?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think the Sixers are much as good as they've ever been built to go up against the Boston Celtics, right? I mean, when you're talking about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, you have three guys that I think, and look, they're great players, so they're going to get theirs from time to time. No one's going to shut these guys completely down. But you have three players that are going to give them a hard time, that are going to put up a fight, that are going to give them good minutes against those guys. So I'd say, those, the only guy that when I look at the East and I look at kind of like bigger, like a power forward that could give them problems, the only guy I keep coming back to is Giannis. But even that, it's Giannis. Like, he's unbelievable. He is the Greek freak. Like, there's a reason why he got that nickname. Like, he is unlike any player in the league. But when I look around the rest of the East, Caleb Martin can match up with probably, 1 through 4, really, Mike. He is a super versatile defender. He's got the lateral quickness to keep up with ones and twos. He's got the size to match up with threes and sometimes fours. He is just a solid all-around basketball player. And like I said, the defensive end is where he excels, and that versatility, I think, is a big part of it.
Again, I leave pretty shocked that they were able to pull this off and get him here. He was a guy on Wednesday. I was like, if you can figure out a way, I think he's going to want way too much money. But this whole new CBA has made something like this possible and really given them a piece that they just have lacked. That guy who adds some toughness and versatility and athleticism on the wing. It's like they get these guys who are one-dimensional, or, it just, they offer nothing on the offensive end, that kind of stuff. Covington was a guy who, he could shoot the three, but he was not a great three-point shooter, not a great offensive player. And even so, he was, this is something that you really haven't had. It's like, and I said, he's not better than Derek White, but it's like having a guy who's a high-level role player.
For sure. And I look at it like this too. You have three stars. You have Tyrese Maxey, you have Paul George, you have Joel Embiid. They're all going to score a lot of points. They're going to do most of the damage. You can't leave Caleb Martin wide open because he'll hit a three. Right. If you close out hard on him, he can dribble by you and get to the rim. He's smart, so he'll know where the next pass goes. He knows where the ball goes. He's not he knows what to do when the ball is in his hands. And I would say the same thing. Kelly Oubre is not a good shooter, but he's all those other things though too. He can put the ball on the floor. He's a good cutter. He can finish at the rim. Mike, I think like it sounds like oversimplifying it, but like a guy like Caleb Martin is just a basketball player, right? Like he's not a shooter. He's not a point guard. He is just a basketball player. He can do anything on the court. And to your point, I don't think the Sixers have done a good enough job in recent years, during the Joel Embiid era, I guess you would say, of finding guys that are just good all-around players. And I think Martin is a prime example. And you said, I think we talked about it last time. We're like watching Oubre. It was like jarring watching a guy that athletic play for the Sixers. Well, now you have another guy who's pretty darn athletic too, who can also do some of those things. So I think Martin and Oubre are just really solid role players to have alongside three stars.
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't know if you got a chance to hear Hart and Brunson. They were talking about like who guards Maxey, who's got Paul George, and I think it was Hart who's like, I got PG. And you're looking at those matchups and thinking the Sixers now present pretty tough matchups for teams because of they have guys who can put the ball on the floor, that can catch and shoot. They can do different things, which they didn't have a lot of in the past.
For sure. And it's funny because that's I would always pose I would pose this to people who, for someone who would say, oh, well, how are the Sixers, like a Julius Randle, how can the Sixers contend with Julius Randle? Who the hell is Julius Randle going to guard in the Sixers starting five? We've seen what happens when he tries to guard Joel Embiid. It has not gone well for Julius Randle. I don't think he can guard Paul George throughout a game. I think Paul George would absolutely have advantage. Same for Kelly Oubre, same for Caleb Martin, and certainly with Tyrese Maxey. I think all the people who are really concerned, I think way too concerned about a size differential, about not having a true four, you have to look at it from the other perspective. These teams are going to have to match up against the Sixers too. It's not cut and dry like that. And the other thing too, Mike, I would just want to say, while we're talking about the Knicks, everyone is obsessed with this rebounding thing. The Sixers got creamed in game one on the boards. If you look at the rest of the series, it was pretty close throughout. The game that they lost, the game 6, the Knicks had 2 more rebounds. You're going to tell me that was a difference? No, the difference in the series was when Joel Embiid went to the bench, they weren't good enough. So everyone could talk about offensive rebounding, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just, to me, it's just funny the way everyone almost has like a PTSD from that series and is just focusing on that. And it's like, no, like you have to be good enough to beat all the teams in the East, not just the New York Knicks.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I said the move to get I said okay, it goes back to Bertans is a guy I would kick the tires on. He got released the other day, and he's a 6'10" guy who all he does is shoot, can't rebound, can't do anything, but that's the kind of guy the Sixers just have, like, the year they had like Ilyasova, like that kind of guy who just catches, shoots 15, 17 minutes. And if he's hot, you got a piece. And everybody's response coming at me is You got a 6'5" guy who's not known for rebounding. You've got Paul George, not a good rebounder. Where's the rebounding on this team? Is rebounding as a team on this roster a concern?
No. I think everyone's just still so shook from that Knicks series. A healthier look, and if you don't have a healthier version of Joel Embiid, it doesn't matter anyway. But I think a healthier version of Joel Embiid will help. Paul George is not a bad rebounder. I don't know where that comes from. I think he pulls down like 6 a game. That's for a wing player. That's not bad. I mean, Caleb Martin, again, you think he pulls down like 4 or 5 a game in like 26 minutes. That's pretty good for a wing. And the same with Oubre. Look at some of Oubre's rebound. Oubre had some really good rebounding games. So it's just funny to me. I think it's just everyone really going back to that series and focusing on, and I want to keep this in mind too, Mike. The Knicks were the #1 offensive rebounding team in the NBA. It's what they do. It's part of the strength of their team. And again, the rebounding would not have mattered if the Sixers didn't just get obliterated in the non-Joel Embiid minutes. That's why they lost that series, not because of rebounding.
Well, it's funny because I said to a guy who posted at me, and I said, look, rebounding power forwards no longer exist. These are guys that come off the bench at 15 minutes and are role guys, and they do dirty work for 15 to 20 minutes. And you bring up the point is the one guy who killed the Sixers in rebounding was Hart. He's not a power forward. He's a guard who just absolutely killed you on these long rebounds and second chances and that kind of stuff. So,
and the other guy, Mike, the other guy that killed you was Isaiah Hartenstein, who is not a Knick anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a factor too.
All this now where they are, anything else still that you are kind of keeping an eye on, or is this a finished product?
Well, they still have roster spots to fill, so they're going to have to do, a couple of minimum deals. By my count, if there's been reports that Adem Bona is going to get a standard deal. That was their second round pick out of UCLA. That's the reports. We'll see. I think there's still Morey's still going to wait to see what kind of shakes loose. So that would put you to like roughly 10 guys. So you still have 5 roster spots to fill out. My guess, and this is just a guess, it's I guess a semi educated one, but I think they keep a roster spot open just to have some flexibility. So I think they're looking at 4 spots. So the KJ Martin balloon contract deal, I think we talked about that last time. He's probably coming back on that. That leaves you with 3 spots.
I actually don't mind KJ Martin coming back.
Listen, and you want a 4, you want a guy that can rebound. There's a guy that's a 4 that can rebound, KJ Martin. But no, and look, I agree.
5 last year.
Yeah, well, look, it's not bad to have that guy that can play the 5 in case Drummond is in a bad matchup and you need a small kind of 5. KJ Martin is not a bad guy to have. I agree. And I thought Nurse did a really good job at the end of year using him and putting him in different spots. So no, yes, the idea is to re-sign him, to trade him, but he can also help you. Beyond that, though, so I would say then you're basically looking at 3 minimum spots. One is going to be for a point guard, I'd imagine. Kyle Lowry still very much, I would think, play. If he signs elsewhere, campaign, why not? I think he would be a fine guy to bring back as a backup point guard. I've seen Marcus Morris's name, out there. That also would make a decent amount of sense. Another guy that could play the 4, and that could give you some small ball 5 minutes as a pick and pop threat. He's in there. And then the third one's kind of a wild card. I don't know. I know they were talking to Reggie Bullock at one point. Reggie Bullock's a fine guy to put on your radar. He's at times been a really good 3-point shooter, complimented Star as well. He was really good in Dallas for a little bit there. I wouldn't be opposed to Bertans again, because it's funny because you bring up a guy like that. In this instance, you're signing Bertans to be like your 12th guy. A guy like Ilyasova was a starter playing huge minutes. So Bertans as your 12th guy on a minimum contract, great. That's fine. So no, I think that spot. I think there is one wild card spot that I'm really not quite sure what they're going to do with it.
All right. Any of the summer league guys intrigue you?
Lots of them, to be really honest. This is their most intriguing summer league team they've had in a minute. The draft picks, obviously McCain. I want to see what he looks like on the ball. Bona, I want to see how he looks. Very raw offensive player, very talented defensive player. Ricky Council the fourth. Does he carry over the shooting improvement? Do we see that? Judah Mintz from Syracuse is a guy that a lot of people turn me on to, and he's very interesting. Came out from Memphis, but I'm curious to see him. And then the 3 veteran guys. You have RJ Hampton, Romeo Langford, and Tony Bradley, who, again, there's roster spots open. So these guys might be playing for a little something here.
No doubt. All right, good stuff. Paul Hudrick and the move from Daryl Morey to bring in Caleb Martin over the holiday there. So good stuff by him. All those moves have been official. They're all sending me emails, and they're going to have a press conference for a bunch of guys tomorrow, not named Paul George, though. He is not he is in Philly, though, right?
He is in Philly, but he is not talking tomorrow now.
All right. Well, when he does, we'll have it for you. And, of course, the guys tomorrow will get some nuggets from that. Paul Hudrick at Liberty Ballers. Check out their coverage of the Sixers offseason and the Summer League, which kicks off Friday? Tonight. Oh, tonight? They're playing tonight?
Yes.
All right, tonight. There you go. All right, Paul. Thanks, buddy.
You got it, Mike. Anytime, man.